Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I am your on-time host, Sal,
On
with my
time.
tardy host, Monty,
I
the
beat you and
liar.
I beat you into this back room, sir. I beat you here. I had
Got
some
my
homework left, but I was still here first.
All right, who's really at fault? The guy who did his work and just slept until 9:29, or the guy who was awake but wasn't doing the work on time?
I put all our notes into this guide. Don't
You
blame
do put
me.
it in notes. All right, that's true. You do put a lot of notes in. All right, welcome back to everybody. Thank you guys for being patient as per usual. Welcome to everybody. Um, Tell your friends, send out the quote tweets, let everybody know we're here because everybody wants to talk about safeties. The most important position the Giants need to draft. We saved the best for last. So we're going to go
Yeah.
over our top five safeties of this class. Actually, not a terrible group. Actually, I was expecting worse. Um,
We've had some bad safety groups of years past, so it's nice to have some interesting guys because I feel like last year it really wasn't. I mean, we had Cam Kinchins and Newbin as the top two guys, and I like Newbin and Kinchins kind of fell off. So and I feel like that's been the case for the last couple of years. Brian, the class of Brian Burns, like Brian Burns is great, but he was a nickel, and I felt like that was the entire class. They're all nickels. It's really been tough going for safeties. So although it's not an elite class by any means, we'll get into that. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good class. So before we get into it, the usual stuff, folks. Please follow us at He's a Giant Pod. Follow me at Queens underscore guy. Follow Monty at MONTECRI5TO on Twitter. We can find us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, whatever. Tweet it out, quote tweet it. We appreciate all of you guys who are always with us. Is there any Giant stuff going on?
I don't even remember his name, but we hired the new defensive back coach.
We hired a guy
Yeah, they hired a
to
guy. He was the
to
former defensive coordinator for Dan Quinn. That's pretty cool.
yeah, to replace the other guy who we fired to blame the guy who should have been
Yeah.
fired.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
guy who developed these rookies that they love so much they fired.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Joe Shane. I get to keep my job because my rookie DBs are so awesome. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fire
Fire the
my
guy who
DB
developed.
coach.
Yeah.
He's the reason we suck. That's the problem. Not that I was a big, like we like Jerome Henderson. In fact, we
Hmm.
talked about making him the like when
Yeah.
they lost Wake Martindale, like just might as well promote him and Andrew Patterson. But like, I mean, I wasn't like one way or another in Jerome Henderson, but to blame that guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, like Deontay Banks didn't get to the level they wanted to be. Xavier McKinney looked miles better after he left, although I think he was on ascension to that when he was leaving. But regardless, it's still a bad look for him. I'm not mad about it. I don't think he's a coach you can't lose, but I also don't think he necessarily deserved to be fired either.
Yeah. Anyway. They still suck. Update: the Giants still suck. Oh yeah, that's what's going on in Giants world. Everybody's upset about Giant fans who don't know what to do about this whole Saquon Barkley thing and the Eagles thing. Like, I went on a rant today. I don't really care. Like, I'm dead inside, so I don't care who wins the Super Bowl. I obviously would prefer. I prefer it would not be the Eagles. I'd rather see the Patrick Mahomes three-peat. But we're so terrible. I could give a shit. I just want to see good football. How about you?
I'm rooting for the next three-peat. I don't have any. Everybody hates the Chiefs right now because they're winning. I have no issue with the Chiefs.
Oh no, not at all.
I've rooted for the Chiefs the last two Super Bowls. To me, I root for greatness. I rooted for Brady his last few Super Bowls. Like I want to see legendary things happen during my lifetime. I want to see the best players do best player things. If they're not doing it against my team, then I'm here to watch greatness. Like with that said, I wanted to see Josh Allen get his first. I want to see Lamar get his first, but I'm not sure as hell. I'm not worried about rooting for Patrick Mahomes.
No, neither am I. Not that, but I don't think I'm going to be bothered too much one way or another. I hope he gets it. Um, there's some good conference games here that this weekend. I just thought they were good football games. So
Yeah,
Josh Allen falling just short again. He just runs into the brick wall that is Patrick Mahomes, and that's
yeah.
that.
It's
Uh,
so ironic that they traded the guy that just stops them every single year, or the pick that
it's like
became that
it's,
guy.
it's like their curse. It
Yeah, it
really
really
is.
is.
All right. Other than that, what else is going on in Giants world? Oh yeah, Mike Kafka is closing in on the potential head coaching job in New Orleans by process of attrition.
Yeah,
Apparently, every nobody wants the job, which is great.
nor should they.
Um, and apparently, Mike McCarthy totally underwhelmed them in his interview, and they don't like him. So they're flying to Philly tonight to interview Kellen Moore, who they're trying to convince to take the job. I guess, but like, I mean, if you're Kellen Moore and you were a guy who like was like this hot candidate for Dallas to be a coordinator a few, to be a head coach a few years ago, and then you get blamed for like some offensive problems, and then you go to the Chargers who are dysfunctional and you're one and done, and then you finally land in Philly and you're going to the Super Bowl. Is your goal to take the first job that comes to you, especially if it's like a dead end job, or or would you rather like pull a Ben Johnson and say, I think I'm going to sit this one out and
The,
wait?
the tough thing is, I mean, the Saints job's brutal. I wouldn't blame anybody, even Kafka, for turning down that job. But the thing is, if you, I mean, to the point of everything you just said, if you're Kellen Moore, do you feel good that, like, you can be riding the highest of highs, but you've seen yourself all that go crashing down before. So do you want to risk that happening again? I don't know.
That's a question. I don't know what he's going to do, but like as Giant fans, we are praying that Kellen Moore says, no, thank you. I'm staying in Philly. And then we're down to Mike Kafka, who would get the job. And I like Mike Kafka. This is not a knock on him. I just think he's got the stigma of the Giants and the stench of them on him. So just a reminder, if he does somehow get that job as head coach, being the minority, Puerto Rican national that he is, we do get we get we get two comp third round picks. Um,
That'd be great.
so the Giants will get a third round compensatory pick this year and another one next year if he gets a job. So we're pulling for Mike Kafka to get a job, mainly for him to get the hell out of this toxic place and go do something else
Hmm.
with his career, and for us to get some picks. So go
Yeah.
Mike Kafka.
Yeah, because at this point, like, are you going to give him his play calling back? Like, I don't even know. I don't know if you put that back, but at the same time, I didn't think they could justify, keeping both the GM and head coach. Or maybe they can justify giving the play calling back Mike Kafka. I don't know with this team anymore.
Who knows what they'll do? He is the highest paid offensive coordinator in football, by the way.
I
Did
think
you see
it's
that?
interesting to say. And he
Yeah,
wasn't even a play caller.
right. They pay him $3 million a year to not make noise and
Yep.
not cause problems because
And
they've embarrassed themselves and yelled at
it,
him too much.
it's funny, just side note, it's funny putting some numbers to what the highest coordinator in the NFL is, because everybody was freaking out about Liam Cohen. Like, they made you the highest paid coordinator in the league, and you're just gonna back something like that. And now we see that's $3 million, and he just got paid $14 million a year to go be. It's like, a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, people are ridiculous. All right, you want to get to the safety stuff?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so per usual, we're using the Bill Walsh scouting guide as our North Star of what to look for in a scouting position this year. We've come up with categories to grade, like we've done with every other position. Um, Reading through the Bill Walsh manual and his guide on this, we do have some, I think, pretty good categories here that do translate over time: speed and range, physicality, coverage skills, field vision, run support, ball skills, instinct. All of those generally translate to safety. Safety is a weird position. It's not. This is one where athletic testing has almost nothing to do with how you're going to perform at the NFL level, but
Mhm.
it's one where you want to see it on tape, right? This is a tape position, like, more than others. Some guys you see the instincts, the angles they take. Some guys you see the physicality and the run support, their coverage skills. And other guys, even though they're going to be athletic demons, you just don't see it. You can tell they're off, and they don't, despite their athletic testing at in underwear at the combine, like on the field of play, they're not as quick to diagnose things. So it's one where the other factors matter a lot. So that said, we did our usual five guys that we ranked. We came up with our independent, with our grades independently. And right before the show, I was not really napping. I was sort of napping, but we did go through our scores and came up with a ranking. So why don't we go through number one? Who's going number one this week?
Why don't you go ahead and start us out, Sal?
All
And
right, let me find.
I'll pull up the the big boy
We,
for us.
so we listed them out of order. So give me a second.
Yeah.
We usually do because we put them in the name. We put the names in. We go through them. We grade them, and then we're like, oh, what are the grades add up to? All right. Number one, the number one safety in our class is Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. Xavier Watts is 6 feet tall. He is 200 and listed at 205 pounds at Notre Dame. He is I mean, for those who've been watching Notre Dame all year and the college football playoffs, this guy's a special football player. So Watts is the guy who stands out. He pops on tape, right? This is what I'm talking about. When you watch him, he's everywhere. They align him all over the field, just kind of all over. They use him in the nickel position. They use him a lot in center field on single high. They use him in the box. He's good in coverage. He's very good in man coverage. He can carry tight ends. He can carry slot receivers and running backs very well in man. He's he's pretty good in that short to intermediate area. I do have some concerns about him with long speed. So I think there's some versatility that's lacking there versus some other guys we might talk about. But for the duties of a safety with the play in front of him, he's really good in coverage. He's good at always keeping his eyes on the quarterback and being ready to close quickly and make plays. He's bursty, right? You watch him, the guy's explosive. He bursts to the ball, he's quick, he diagnoses plays quickly, he has good athleticism, good instincts, and he closes fast and he hits guys hard. He brings a finish to plays, and you like seeing that from safeties, guys who like really pop other guys, the ball carriers, knock the ball out of their hand, try to force fumbles, try to force mistakes. They really make guys think twice before running over the middle in his area. Just a physical football player, and he's good in the run game. Like he'll quickly diagnose run plays both from a deep alignment and even when and in the box, or he'll quickly diagnose run plays, close on it, and physically finish plays. So he kind of does everything you want a safety to do. Really high IQ player, diagnoses quickly, like I said, and he is, despite being a very aggressive player, he's disciplined. He's not a guy who like abandons his run fits when he's in run support. Um, Bottom line to me is this isn't a do-all safety. He's a versatile. He can do everything. He can play all over. Even a little bit of nickel, a lot of center field, a lot of box safety. He does everything you want. I think his strength, his best usage is probably in the deep alignment, with his eyes facing forward and mirroring and shadowing quarterbacks and figuring out where that ball's going. But he really could do everything. So I think that this is a guy who you when you take him, he's a starting safety in essentially any scheme in any defense. That's what I have on Watts. What do you think, Monty?
Yeah, man. I was a big fan of Watts. And I mean this is a guy who's relatively new to the position. He's a former wide receiver and I think he's only been playing safety full time for a couple of years now if I read that correctly while I was going through it. And I mean this guy, had a really good year and has a lot of ball production over the last couple of years. I mean, he's had some of the best ball production in all of college football over the last 2 years. I'm going to pull up the exact numbers so we can do that. I don't have that up, so let me pull it here. Let's see. Over the last 2 years, he had 6 interceptions in 2024, 7 interceptions in 2023, and he had 3 PBUs apiece. So 9 and 10 times respectively by the 2 years of making a play and knocking the ball away, or making a play and intercepting the ball. That's as a former wide receiver, it makes kind of sense. And when you watch the tape, I mean, you can just turn on the highlight film and you'll see. I mean, you just said you'll probably. I mean, right there, you'll have 19 or 19 times just touches the ball, and whatever it was, 11 times he intercepts it. You're if you turn on the tape, you're bound to find a game where he's getting his hand on the ball and turning it over. Really, you touched on kind of. I agree with you. I think he's a guy who is going to play single high safety for the NFL. I think he's got the speed and the range to play that position, and he has the ball skills. And what I really like about him is he's just such a physical player. You have those guys who are rangy or ball hawks, and that's nice, but you don't typically see that coupled with a guy as physical as Xavier Watts is. Xavier Watts is a guy who came down on guys in the run game, is a guy who was physical at the line with these guys, pressing them, and a guy who really kind of makes wide receivers pay when they're coming across the field. He will absolutely light these guys up. Really high football IQ. I think a lot of that comes from, some of his wide receiver background. I think he really understands route concepts, and just ultimately he plays like the players I like. You know, I've kind of learned it more and more as I was going through these tapes. I'm like, I was talking to Sal about it earlier today, but just I love the safeties who just like play with their hair on fire. I want a safety who just plays with some damn urgency and just always looks like he's trying to make a play. A guy that comes to my mind was I was in love with Antoine Winfield coming out of Minnesota, Antoine Winfield Jr. He was a guy who plays like that, and you definitely see a little bit of that from Watts. I mean, I don't know if I've seen a guy play quite other than maybe like the Honey Badger that plays with that amount of like energy and like hair and fire type level. I don't know exactly how to gauge that, but he has some of that in him. It can lead to negatives. You talked about a little bit. You can be over aggressive and you can miss some tackles. You can over pursue it at times, and I do think he needs to. Speaking of negatives, just like you said, you talked about how you can be a little bit better in man coverage. But overall, I think he is a really, really good football player. I know D Kit here is giving me some shit, and he was right. He's one who told me right away. I didn't look into it enough. He said Xavier Watts is the best safety in this draft. I gave D Kit credit earlier this week. He called it. He was right. I'm totally in agreement with him. Xavier Watts, although we'll talk about some other safeties that are getting the hype right now, Xavier Watts is the best safety in the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's your best bet, right? He's your highest floor safety who can do everything for you. And yeah, I'll tell you, like we talk about comps. You know, it's he reminds me of Xavier McKinney. There's a lot of McKinney coming out of Alabama that I see in Watts here. Like McKinney was that sort of versatile player that, I mean, I think if I recall, McKinney like had almost equal number of snaps in the box, in single high and in like the nickel alignment, and he had good ball skills. It didn't have elite speed, but he was great with the play in front of him, great closing. Like he was a better player than an athlete. Um, and just the instincts, the ball skills. So there's a little bit of Xavier McKinney and Xavier Watts, I think. And I think I mean, is he quite the player? Obviously, time will tell, but I think from just a stylistic standpoint, I don't think that's a crazy comp. I like just from a Giants perspective, you saw that what McKinney could do for us or through what, like three different defensive schemes. You saw well, two different defensive schemes, but you saw what McKinney was able to do in different alignments and different usages and was always useful. And I feel like Watts is that kind of guy. Like you're not going to ask him to play a ton of nickel, like man coverage and run with guys forever, because I don't think that's his strength. And I think McKinney would look terrible doing that too. But again, facing eyes forward and in different alignments as a safety and not asked to like turn and run with guys, you're talking about a
Oh, I think I lost Sal here. I don't know if Sal maybe got a call or something, but oh, there you are. You back, Sal? Okay, I'm gonna talk while he might have just got a call on his phone and broke it up. Some of the stats here that we're anybody who's watching, but anyone who's listening, you can't see it. We have the PFF guide here, but it gives you a good idea where some of these things fall. He has a 15.6% incompletion rate, which is really, really good. That's a top percentile number. And he got a 89.5 coverage grade, which is also very incredible, and a 79.5 run game, which is again very good for the number. So, across the board, he's a very strong player with all of those. We mentioned it though in the missed tackle rate, 12.6%. That is definitely not great. That is not where you'd want it to be. You definitely want it down underneath like 10% for these safeties. but that comes with some of his over aggressiveness. And oh, can you guys not hear me? Is that true? Hello? Okay, it's just DK. I'm sorry, DK. You threw me off. Thank you, Rocco. This old man has his tech issues and is blaming it on me. Okay. No, don't listen to DK about tech issues. That's what I've learned. Okay. Sal got a work call. He's getting back on here in a second, so we'll flush out our ratings here and I'll pull it off. But overall, Xavier Watts, very, very good football player. I think is the cleanest safety in the draft. Is a guy who can kind of do everything for you, and is really projects to be a high level safety in the NFL. I don't think we're talking about any blue chippers here at the top of the class. But you are talking about a really good football player and a guy I think can be a first round pick for you. Do we have you back yet, Sal? Nope, we got frozen Sal. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just go into our ratings. So I'll pull that up and I'll start reading those off, and hopefully we can get Sal back before that finishes off. So I'm gonna pull up our ratings. I'm gonna do that right now for you guys. Okay. So the categories we ended up going for, and this was a Sal alluded to whoever before, we always try to do our best and to follow some of the guidelines that the great Bill Walsh put out there. Great article about how to evaluate each position, and sometimes modernize it when necessary. But I thought that he nailed it on the head with a lot of things that are important here, and we try to take some of the most important positions or traits. So we have
Yes.
speed and range for safety. We have physicality. We have coverage. We have field vision. We have run support. We have ball skills, and we have instincts. And of course, our Giants grade and our Goon grade. So I think we got Sal back just in time to jump into these ratings. So
Sorry.
welcome back, Sal. And we got some extra confusion here because D-Kit told me my mic was broken, but it turns out D-Kit's AirPods just died, and I was trying to figure out mic issues for about 10
We're
seconds.
having that kind of night. I apologize, folks. I got a bit of an urgent call and it took me out of the game, so I apologize. Yeah, we're not a dumpster fire. We're a dumpter fire. Thank you very
Dump
much.
fire, yeah.
Right. So where are we? We're at the grades of
Yep.
Watts. All right.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and go through them? I'd explain to them kind of the which each ones were.
Great. So we came out with essentially the same overall score, slight differences like speed and range. This really refers to your a lot of different things, but mainly it's long speed. And it's your
Mhm.
ability to cover a lot of range, both in chasing people in pursuit, but also just covering ground. If you're in that center field position. So there, I gave him a 3. You gave him a 4. I kind of I almost switched my grade to a 4 because I know where you're coming from. Because when he's playing center field, he covers a lot of range,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably why you gave him. The only reason I gave him a 3, which is an average NFL number, is because when he's in the nickel alignment and he's asked to run with the guys, you see the long speed problems. Like he's not a guy like I don't think he's
It,
that type of player.
and it makes it really tough to honestly grade these guys because all the safety positions are so different from each other. Like theoretically, like we should be giving all these like box guys a lot, not all of them, but a lot of these box guys should be getting 2 because they can never play high, but they have speed and range for where they play. And same like with nickel, box, strong safety, free safety, single high, all that. It just depends where you play and how these ratings affect. So we did our best to put some numbers to them.
Agreed. Um, in physicality, that I think that speaks for itself. Just watch him. He's a thumper. He's an above average hitter. So we both gave him a 4. Coverage, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. Again, only reason I gave him less than a 4 here, Monty, is because his coverage with his when he's running with guys and he's going
Hmm.
beyond the second level is a little bit lacking. Again, it's being a little nitpicky because you're not going to ask him to do that a lot. I think he's more of like a, eyes facing the, eyes facing the quarterback kind of guy, and then he would be more like a four. But I'm not
Usually
giving a
his best. Yeah,
yeah, but I think we both kind of view him the same way. He's very good in coverage, but as long as he's not asked to turn and run with guys much.
that's fair.
Uh, Field vision, I gave him a four. You gave him a three. So I'm curious why I gave him a three. I gave him a four because when he's in single high alignment, I think he sees the field so well and he closes so fast. Well, what did you think?
I think that's totally fair. And this again, just maybe where we're gonna end up grading these things a little bit differently based off their positions. I agree. His coverage, field vision's a four, but I think when you look at field vision in the run game and factoring that in too, that's where I knocked it down to a three. I feel like he lacks sometimes to be able to identify a run fast enough and fill those lanes.
Yep. Okay. Run support, I gave him a four. You gave him a three. I think this is one of his strengths. So again, can you tell me why you thought he was a three, not a four or five?
I thought he could be over aggressive at times. He wasn't, so sometimes, it's hard to separate. We don't have a separate thing for tackling. We kind of encompass seemingly run support and tackling a little bit in the same. So I give him a little bit of a ding for the tackler he is. And I did think like I say, I think he plays over aggressive and, can put himself in the wrong spot to make a tackle. And I do think that affects his ability to play in the run game, but I do think he's overall is a good physical player who can play downhill for you and all that type of stuff. But I think he um could use a little bit more vision there and being able to not over pursue it.
Both ball skills, you gave him a five, I gave him a four. The only reason I didn't give him a five is I'll be honest, I have a hard time giving fives out sometimes. But you can make an argument he's a five. He's outstanding there. Um, Instincts, I gave him a four, you gave him a three. I'm assuming you were leaning near four on this.
Mhm. Yeah, I was going back and forth with those two. Again, came down a little bit more to some of his instincts in the run game and things like that. Just give him little dings for it, but overall, I thought he was a very good player. And like I said, to the ball skills, I thought the a level he got his hand on the ball and made plays that's ultimately why I gave him the five.
Yep. And I think we both view him as a good fit for the Giants if they were actually a functional organization and could just use a really good football player as a safety. So we gave him a four, and he's definitely a goon the way he plays. So he got a five from
Yes.
both of us. So
Yep.
he's our safety one in this class. I think Xavier Watts, I mean, I'd summarize him as a versatile scheme, you know, scheme independent safety. Put him anywhere, he's going to be a good player. This is what you want: instinctive, intelligent, thumper, good in coverage, does everything well. Um, so he's safety one in this class. I mean, is he a first rounder? I would say probably not. Borderline first, second round territory. I'm gonna
Mhm.
guess, right? I don't think he has the physical attributes that are going to make him go early as a safety. I think usually the safeties that go in the first round are not, they're typically the guys who have a little bit more to offer physically and can play that nickel alignment, a little bit more. And we'll get to that. There are a couple of guys who fit that mold, but for us, I think he grades out as our best safety, pure safety. Why don't we go
Correct.
to number two? Yeah, why don't
Yes.
you do two?
Yeah, I'm excited to go there. So let me go
Yeah.
ahead and
And I'll be
pull.
honest, number two might have been both of our favorite player, honestly,
Yes,
watching this. Like the most fun player to watch out of these five.
I agree. I think he got the exact same grade from me as I gave to Watts. So let me go ahead and pull him up. With our number two is Andrew Mukuba from Texas. I mean, just a phenomenal football player. I mean, so this guy is a former cornerback who came from the University of Clemson, 6 foot, 190 pounds, and he has those cornerback instincts when he plays the game. But something when you don't see from you don't expect from a cornerback hybrid or somebody who came from that position is how physical Andrew Mukuba played. And I think in the chat, Rocco is basically saying when I was trying to describe like the safeties I love, it's like you're talking about Andrew Mukuba, and in a lot of ways I was. Andrew Mukuba is, he's that dog on that field. He is that guy who is going to play every snap at 120% speed. He is trying to absolutely kill guys on the field. He is always trying to make plays um, wherever he is, and he has really good hands to go ahead and make those plays. And his athleticism to me pops on the field. I think he just flies around. He's all. I mean, I don't know what he's going to end up running in like the combine. What he's going to test, but how fast he plays the game, it really doesn't matter to me. He is, I think, like if you went ahead and looked at his like average GPS times when he was on the field, I'd imagine it'd be very high because he is just always going at 100 miles per hour. And I think this is a guy who has really high football IQ. Another one of those guys who, I think he sees route concepts very well. I think a lot of that, again, kind of like what we talked about Watts, but I think that comes again from playing multiple positions, playing from that cornerback position. He's a versatile football player. I could see him play quite literally anywhere I'm in the secondary. I don't think there's any spot in the secondary Andrew Mukuba couldn't play. I think he is a guy who could play single high for you. I think he could play box safety. I think he could play, your standard strong safety. I think he could play nickel. I think he could even be an outside cornerback for you because he's shown that at Clemson that he has the ability to do that. So he does a little bit of everything for you. And like I said, he's just a physical football player. I love how he approaches and plays the game. Big fan of Andrew Mukuba. And then, the only things I have against him, I thought he had some issues in the run game. He could sometimes take some false steps, not read it correctly, and could struggle finishing consistently. He can get to the football and make the tackle, but didn't always finish. And overall was, again, another guy who, the reason I like Watts and Mukuba is they're so physical and how they play the game, but sometimes that can leave with you just, being over aggressive and not making the play in the football. That type of stuff can ultimately hurt you. But overall, just love Andrew Mukuba. I don't know where he's going to get end up, but he's going to be a guy I'm going to root for in the league. Hopefully, no matter where he goes, hopefully he doesn't end up in a place I can't root for him.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Mukuba was definitely, I think, the most fun watch we had. Um, and like you said, like the guy who plays with his hair on fire, that's Mukuba, right? He's flying. I mean, the two guys who of the five we're going to go over that played like that were definitely Watts and Mukuba, right? They were the guys who were flying all over the field, hitting people. Watts looked like a more seasoned safety, right? A guy who's been doing it with control, a more physical prototype that matches your typical safety. It's just very projectable to how he's going to land in the NFL. Mukuba is 6 feet tall, 186 pounds. And he's got some room to go to put on some weight to be like your standard. So I don't know what percentile that is, but I'm guessing he's like 10th percentile for safeties.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 10th to 20th percentile. He's a little bit underweight there, because like you said, he basically came into college as a DB, as a cornerback. Now it's interesting to know his story a little bit. So his parents were refugees. I don't know if you know this. They were from DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he grew up in Zimbabwe till he was a kid. He was like 8 or 9 years old. Moved to Texas, picked up football there. Um, and when he got recruited, he was like a 4-star recruit coming out of school. Goes to Clemson, and he was like all ACC first team on defense or something like that. Or he might have been, I can't remember, but he might have been freshman defensive player of the year in Clemson. And he's under Brett Venables. He learned a lot. When Venables got when Venables left, I mean, he was moved around. Eventually, I think people kind of forgot about the guy until he transferred to Texas, and they understood how to use him. And you could like Texas has if you consider like cornerback and safety as a combo, they arguably have the best cornerback safety combo of any school putting guys in the draft this year, right? The other one that would be in contention would be Notre Dame with Benjamin
Hmm.
Morrison and obviously Xavier Watts, although Morrison got
Hmm.
hurt early. But Jade Barron and Mukuba are right up there, right? And I think there's a chance that Barron is look. I mean, he was mocked by Jeremiah like middle of the first round, so you see his stock rising. So anyway, and both of those guys pop on tape, and I think I bring up his history and everything to just kind of tell you this guy took a little bit of a path to get to where he is, and he plays with a sense of urgency. You see it on every play. Every single play, he's exploding towards the football. Every single one. He wants to hit people, wants to hurt them. He wants to knock the ball out of their hands. He wants to make a play on the football. If anything, he plays with too hot a motor sometimes. I think if there's a knock on him, he's almost hyper aggressive. But that's just the way he plays football, and I love it. You get away with it a little bit more in college than you would in the NFL. They tend to be more lenient on some of the over aggressive plays, but you want guys who play like this. He's fast, he's aggressive. Despite his frame and his size, it doesn't seem to affect his ability to take down guys. He's a pretty good tackler. He wraps guys up, he takes them down. He's plenty physical. I have really nothing bad to say about this kid. I think that personally, I mean, looking at the only negative maybe is just the weight, right? I think he's got to put on a little bit of weight at the NFL
Yeah.
level to play the kind of safety you want him to play to be versatile, right? If he doesn't put on more weight, I think he's pigeonholed as a single high safety. You
Yeah.
know,
That
I
that's
think
fair.
like he cannot be an NFL box safety down to down if he doesn't put on 10 to 15 pounds, right? And I
Hmm.
think that's and I but here's the thing, his frame. There's some guys you can tell they're just gonna be skinny forever, right? Like a guy
Yep.
like Jade, like look at Jaden Daniels. He's not putting on 30 pounds of muscle or 20
Yeah.
pounds. Like it's not
Emmanuel
like
Forbes.
right. He's an ectoderm, right? Like Emmanuel Forms, an ectoderm. Like they're just a body type where they're not going to put on a ton of mass. I think that's not this guy's body type. I think Makuba has the frame to add on muscle and add on, another 10 pounds and be perfectly fine in any alignment. But I think if there's a criticism of the guy, it's his weight is gonna limit his usage a little bit at the NFL level where they're gonna say you're a single high safety. We're not going to trust you in the box. You're going to have to get a little bit bigger and stronger to do that. Because I just think in the NFL they care about that, right? You don't see a lot of guys sitting in the box who are sub 200 pounds in safety. That's rare.
And
You have to be a special kind of athlete.
yeah, and we'll see where you know these guys, what these guys end up weighing in at the combine. But 10 pounds isn't crazy to do. I know he's puts
Yeah.
numbers probably a little fudged right now. I'm sure he's a little lower, but I'm sure you'll come in close to that at the combine. And that's not a crazy thing to do once you get into an NFL weight program. So I agree. I think 200 is a really comfortable weight for an NFL safety. And so yeah, just get there. And I agree with you. And I think he can do it. Looking at some of these stats here, some crazy numbers here: 89.7 coverage grade, 75.8 run defense grade, really good. 14.4 missed tackle rate. That's definitely a little higher than you'd like. 26.1% forced incompletion. He forced an incompletion on basically over a quarter of passes thrown at him. So, really, really impressive player. And he had a 90 PFF grade overall, which was one of the best in the country. First year playing a safety. And another thing I want to call out is, you mentioned the teams putting in these great, safeties into the league. And, you can mention Watts, you can mention Mukuba. And, those were two guys who led two of the best defenses in the country, especially in, coverage defenses. And you can mention, a guy that our guy D-Kit mentioned in chat when not eligible this year, and Caleb Downs. And, I don't think it's a surprise. You saw a year that was kind of defenses led by these safeties, Mukuba, Watts, Downs led three of, the best defenses in the country. And, I think you saw these guys impact and how it affected their football team.
I think that's the nature of how the game is changing, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
like you went through this period where like the two high safeties where the safeties and the DBs are really just dropping back into zone, prevent like big plays, and their job was just don't let bad things happen. We're back in a period where it's more like a Wink Martindale style of football where there's a lot of rotational movement of the safeties, and a lot of times the safeties are the mic in this defense, right? They're in these, I mean, in these modern defenses, they're the quarterbacks out there. They're calling the defense, and they're asked to do a lot of different things. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that the best defenses have the best safeties in this world, right? Where they're aggressive. Um, so I think he's the weapon. I will point out a couple of things, like just getting back to what I was saying about how he's used. He was used primarily as a slot corner the last couple of years at Clemson, and then he goes to Texas, and this year he had 508 snaps deep in center field, 129 in the box, and only 71 slot alignments, right? So they
Hmm.
really, really cut down his slot alignments. And while I think he has the athletic ability to play nickel, I really feel like, I'm not sure that's where his strength is. Again, getting back to, I think this guy's a single high safety in the NFL. I think you can use him in a lot of different places in small packages of,
Yeah,
sub packages, things like that. But for the most part, you're drafting this guy to be your center fielder.
yeah, and but well, I mean, to the other point, wherever you put it, this guy's going to be playing his ass off no matter where you put him on the line. He's going to trying to make an
Yep.
impact.
Yeah. Let's get to
And
his scoring, unless you want
what
to
one
go
other
ahead.
stat I want to say before we did it is just looking here, 12.1 passer rating. Just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
that's pretty insane. And a guy with 4 interceptions and 6 forced incompletions this year. Again, another guy 10 times made plays on a ball to help his football team. That's what you want to see from these football players.
So let's go to the scoring system. Speed and range, we both gave him a 4. Could have given this guy a 5. He's fast as shit. Like I could, I thought about it, but he at least a 4 here. He's an above average speed range guy. Physicality, you gave him a 4. I thought about giving him a 4. I changed him to a 3 only because of the frame, but I think you're right.
Mhm.
He does play physical. I could have easily given him a 4 here. I think this might be our only difference in the scoring for the most part. Well, only major difference at least. Coverage, we both gave him a 4. Field vision, I gave him a 4. You gave him a 3. I think he sees the field really well from the single high alignment, and he
Yeah.
makes a lot of plays.
Mhm.
Why'd you give him I'm curious why you gave him a 3 here.
I just think that he still needs to learn a little bit more from the safety position. I think that he can read it, especially in the again a little bit more of the run. I gave him a little bit of knock to how he handles and reading and run defense.
Run support, we both gave him a 3. Ball skills, we both gave him a 4. I gave him a little bit lower grade on instincts. You gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. I went back and forth on 4 and 3 on this. I'll be honest, if I did it again, I might just give him a 4. It's close. It's
I
close. He's got very good instincts.
I think
I think he's
I
at least average.
I
Yeah.
think what put me over the top for the instincts was that play against Georgia
Oh
where
God.
where
Yeah.
where he just reads the QB's eyes, flies over, makes the interception. Also made me want to give him a 5 at ball skills. I didn't because this is
Yeah.
really the only year he had major ball skills, but holy shit, that catch he made was incredible.
I mean, and we both gave him a 4 for Giants. You gave him a 5 for Green. I gave him a 4. But bottom line is like there's projectability here. So the difference between him and Watts, in my opinion, and why Watts graded out just he eked him out a little bit. I think Watts is close to a finished product, starting safety, any alignment, any scheme, any defense, hand in the card. He's a starter day one, right? And I
Yeah.
think with Mukuba, I think his upside is higher than Watts, honestly. Just
Mhm.
as an athlete, it's just that I think he's a little less diverse in terms of his versatility. And I do think that he has to go to the right scheme. If he goes to like a I mean, how's he gonna do if he's in a if a team takes him that is always in like a in the too deep alignment and he's asked to rotate between being in the box and center field and it's like an even distribution. I don't think that's maximizing his current skill set. I think he really needs to go to like a Wink Martindale style, that kind of say, when you're in cover one, cover three a lot, single high, and he's allowed to play center field. I think that's where he really shines.
Mhm.
Not unlike what's his name? Brad's guy. We were talking about this. Brad's guy from last year. The guy, the Emmanuel Forbes of safeties. What was his name?
I was gonna say Wiggins as soon as he said Emmanuel Forbes,
No,
but
no, no.
oh,
Rad's
you
got
had USC guy,
Bullock.
Kill
Bullock.
Bullock, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think he's a better player than Bullock, and I think he's a
Hmm.
much more stout athlete than Bullock. But I do think that Bullock is a guy that you needed in center field, and I feel the
Hmm.
same way for now. I feel the same way about this kid. But again, like a little bit of mass added, a little bit more experience. I think he can be like a do it all kind of safety.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference I think Caleb Bullock helps, really identify that because that's a guy you really could only put in center field. I think why I feel a little bit differently um, here is because he really is just such a high motor physical player that no matter where you put him, like he is going to just try to dominate and make plays. And Bullock was a little bit more of a guy who he would make some business decisions, and he wasn't really there for making would really mess up USC and defense there, kind of make missing on some big plays.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I can buy it. I think you can say it's not going to take you much to sell me on this kid. I really love the way he plays football. So, is he a first rounder? I don't think so. I think he's a second rounder, though. I do think he's a second rounder. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't think teams are going to pass up on this playmaking ability in the modern NFL beyond the second round.
yeah. I mean, he is a guy who I am hoping the NFL overthinks. When I was watching him, that's all that in like I'm like, I hope this guy is a giant because I really hope he's a giant because the NFL overthinks him. I hope he goes round 3 because the NFL is like it's a little small. He only has 1 year at safety, and all this stuff, all these reasons they make up why not to take him, and don't just appreciate the football player he is, and how much he can just dominate on the field. I would love if he fell somehow.
He's a fairly good complement to what Tyler Newman brings. Because I don't think Tyler Newman can play center field, even though they used him a lot. By the way, they used him a shit ton in center field this year.
Hmm.
I thought that was a huge mistake, and I just didn't like the way they used him. I think
Yeah,
but in
and,
any case, and his
and they
ball
would do
is
too high well together too.
right, exactly. I think they would do too high, but it would always be Newman coming downhill.
Hmm. And
And I think
he
that
proved to be a good tackler in the NFL.
right. Whereas the Newman thing, like I mean, the way they used him, just the guy had no interceptions. Like this
He
guy's a
he
ball
touched
hawk
the
in
ball
college,
once.
right? And it's just you take a guy. This is we're gonna veer off on a little bit of a tangent, but this is like a Giants thing. You take a good football player, he does something very specific really well, and you say, I'm gonna have him do something completely different in the NFL and expect great results, and then I'll be surprised when he doesn't have them. It's
Mhm.
We said this when we reviewed Newman last year. We said the guy should be in a too high system where he is allowed to basically come downhill and have support because he's not going to be a good center fielder. He doesn't have the range to do that. Don't ask him to do that. You're going to limit his production. But if he's covering half the field as a safety, he's a ball hawk. He's a threat. What did they have him do? Cover the whole field. And lo and behold, he never got there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And I'd
yeah.
say, speaking of Newbin, who I mean, I did have, I don't know where you ended up on it. I know we originally had Kitchens safety one. I know by the draft had Newbin as my safety one. I look at these guys, kind of similarly. Newbin was a little bit older of a prospect, but both guys who have, I mean, these guys are a little bit more athletic. Newbin was a little bit more refined, but guys who have the coverage ability but are physical football players who can come down and make plays. You know, guys who are kind of probably more of the, you know, early day 2 type of picks.
Yep. Rad, Mr. Know-It-All in the chat there said, um, he said that the only problem with pairing a guy like Mukuba with Newman would be it'd be a tell of what secondary coverage you're playing, and he's right. Like
Mhm.
like until Mukuba develops the more versatile game, I think it is a bit of a tell. But I
Mhm.
think I'll put it this way: I think Makuba has more ability to develop a more versatile game than Nubin does. Nubin is a finished product. He
Yeah,
is what he is. You're just
and he has
using
some
him wrong.
physical limitations a little bit
Right.
too.
Right. And you're just using Nubin wrong.
Mhm.
Like if you use him the way he's supposed to be used and he fits your defense, he is a scheme dependent safety. He's not for everybody. We said that. We said Cam Kinchens was a better fit for whatever. Anyway, um, let's move on. I can go off on the Giants' philosophy or lack thereof all day. All right, let's go to number three. Number three on our list is a guy who has been called a blue chip prospect by many people all year. I don't see a blue chipper, but I see a very good football player. So our number three safety in this class on our review is no other than Malachi Starks from Georgia. Malachi Starks was a five-star recruit coming out of high school. I think he was like the number four recruit in the country or something like that at the position. He's 6'1", 205 unofficially. I don't know if he's at the Senior Bowl or not. I can't remember. Um, Malachi Starks is that prototype of safety that I was talking about that goes in the first round. So
Mhm.
forget our grading system first. We grade based on what we see, period. I don't care where they get drafted. We're going to grade it based on what we see for the position they're listed as. But Starks is a little bit tricky. Starks is that guy who is a hybrid nickel defender and a very good hybrid nickel defender and safety, um, who is very versatile. And he's really kind of like a pseudo cornerback, pseudo safety. These are the guys who go to the
Mhm.
back end of round one, right? These are the guys that the NFL covets because they're kind of rare. And when they're good at it, think about Brian Branch, a
Mhm.
couple of years ago. Not saying he's Brian Branch, but that prototype. Think about Daxton Hill from Michigan a few years ago. These
Yeah, there's a
prototypes.
lot of guys in that class that were
Right.
that prototype.
So Malachi Starks is that prototype. He's not the single high center fielder that Mukuba is right now. He's not the he's not like the physical presence that I think Watts is. And he's not the pure safety that Watts is, but he's a very good, well-rounded, versatile player. So what does he do well? Like his calling card is coverage. He's really good at following receivers like the cornerback he really is. He can mirror them. He's fluid. He stays with them in man. He's good at not as running with with his back to the football and turning his eyes and has good instincts, good ball skills, getting his hand on the ball when it comes his way. So he can really stay in phase with receivers like
Mhm.
just a standard cornerback and does a very good job. He's fluid. He's quick. He has great long speed. I mean, I think you see that. He picks up speed with stride length as he goes down the field. Not a lot of guys are running away from him. He has good burst. He's an athlete. You can see it. He's probably going to test well. I'm going to guess he's going to test pretty well at the combine. Um, and when he's facing the play with his eyes forward, he can close if he's either in off man coverage or he's in zone. He can close pretty nicely on plays and effectively. Um, he's versatile, like I said. He can play every kind of position that you want him to as a nickel slash safety. He's got very good ball skills. He has good ball production, tracks the ball well, has good pass breakups, can get interceptions on tough plays. He has great body control, when he's out up in the air competing for footballs. Um, and he's a very disciplined football player. Like he shows his experience as a defensive back. He's good in run fits. He maintains gap integrity very nicely. He's a good tackler. He does everything well, He's good
Mhm.
at good IQ. He doesn't do anything bad. Nothing. Like he has zero weaknesses in his game, as far as I'm concerned, that are real red flags. He does
Sure.
everything well. But, the reason he's not number one for us, honestly, is because there are some things he doesn't do outstanding. There are a lot of things I don't think he's outstanding at, right? Like, I don't think for a guy who's a nickel, I don't think he's outstanding running all the way down the field.
Mhm.
I don't think he's outstanding beating guys or covering guys who are really quick twitch athletes in the
Yep.
slot. I've seen him get burned by those guys. I don't think he is outstanding as a physical presence. I think he's good. He's a good tackler, but I don't think he's a guy who is an imposing threat. So
Mhm.
he's very good all around. I don't think he's really outstanding anything, but that's kind of my take on him. He's just a really good player who has tremendous athletic attributes and versatility, is the prototype of player that the NFL covets in the first round. But to me, he doesn't do anything like at a super high level. Not at least he didn't this year. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, I was disappointed watching Malachi Starks, but not because I found he was a bad player, but because of what you know watching him, and I saw him in big games last year, and he made some big plays. He's a guy who has showed up in big moments. You've heard so much about this guy. He's been touted as this blue chip like top elite safety prospect. And then I watched him and I was just like, meh. Like, I don't know. Like, he's good. He's really good. He's I think he's the best run defender for probably, like, I haven't watched every safety in this draft. We'll see if I find other guys, but I think he's the best run defender, at least out of all this group we're watching, pretty easily. Like, he isn't, like you said, he's not the physical force that I like to see. He's not going to be a guy who makes you pay, and he's going to bring the juice with his tackles and things like that. But that can be flashy and fun, and yes, that can help like raise the morale of your team, and lower the morale of the other team when they're just getting constantly smashed and things like that. But we just went off about these other guys where, yeah, they're physical. That leads to a lot of missed tackles. That's not Malaki Starks. Malaki Starks is a very conservative tackler and a guy who always is a strong tackler and is always in the right place. You see it right here, the 8.1, missed tackle rate. I mean, some of the guys you saw like Brian Branch. Brian Branch was a guy who was pretty conservative with tackling, always in the right place and made his tackles. He's not quite to that level. I think Brian Branch had 3 missed tackles his entire college career, something insane like that. But Malaki Starks is a very, very good run defender and a very good tackler. And I think he has really good football IQ. I think he diagnoses plays and responds well to it. You kind of went into it. I thought he's good in coverage. I thought he could play well in zone. And read quarterback's eyes. I thought he carried players well and man from the nickel, even though, like I agreed, if you carried him too far upfield, that's a problem. If he's going up against,
then he looks like a safety.
Yeah,
that's
and
the
then
issue.
and then he covers, if he covers the NFL and covers a Puka Nakua, it's gonna make him look stupid. Like there's issues there, but like at the end of the day, that's a safety. But it's, I don't know, man. And then like he played a lot of deep this year. You can see that 400s deep. I don't know. When you watch, I didn't see him like as a guy who they really left like single high deep coverage. If I saw a lot of too high, a little bit him playing a little bit closer. I didn't. He's a really good athlete. There's a ton of good reports about his athleticism. So I don't know why they didn't do it, but he was not the guy who they really had on me because he didn't play downhill super hard and they wanted him near. I don't know. Maybe Georgia just knew what worked for them, and it's just not what they asked him. But I don't know. Maybe he's a guy. Like I said, we talked about this guy's a great athlete. He didn't necessarily show on tape. This guy has a ton of good traits. I think that didn't always like pop. Like I thought he had great body control on some of his interceptions and stuff like that. That type of stuff. Even though he didn't get his hand on the ball a ton, when he did, I thought he looked pretty impressive getting up and knocks the ball. He had a really good vertical. I think that might be the part that really elevates Malaki Starks. When this guy shows the type of athlete it is, it really go ahead.
And that's why I think his coverage, like where I think in coverage, he's sort of average, but I think this gets into like, what do you value, right? And guys who turn the ball over are more valuable than guys who could just run with guys,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you have to sort of figure that into your grading a little bit and how you view them. So, give me a guy who is adequate in coverage as opposed to a guy who's excellent in coverage. If the guy who's adequate is a guy who has a knack for the football and can
Mm-hmm.
take it away, and because he's more valuable to you than the guy who can just bat a ball away, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's sort of where Starks has a little bit of a hidden value. Maybe it's not hidden, but you know what I mean. I think that's where he has more value. So, um, I'm not sure what's going on there in the chat. I think DK and Rad are having a fight as per usual. So,
But DK was right. He is no Beanie Bishop.
He's a giant discovery, Beanie Bishop. Went straight from he's a giant right to the Pittsburgh Steelers and has become an overnight sensation. Um, all right, let's get into our scores here. Um, so I think we have identical scores because I made some adjustments to my score after a while, but basically we do have identical scores here. So this is going to be pretty simple. I'll let you load it up here.
Yep.
I think this will be a fairly easy assessment. All right, speed and range, we both gave before. He has very good long speed. I think that,
Hmm.
and I think he's a very rangy athlete. Physicality, we gave him a 3. He could be more physical. He's quite the physical specimen, but he doesn't play with much more than
No.
that. Coverage, we gave him a 3. I said I think his calling card is coverage in the NFL, but that has more to do with ball skills, and we'll get to that. But in terms of just running with guys, I would say 3. Very good in the short and intermediate area, a little lacking deeper than that. Field vision, 3. Run support, 4. Very solid in run support. Good
I could have gone
tackler.
5 and run support. He just
Yeah,
isn't like
he's a
he
solid.
he doesn't bring like
He
the
does the
the
thump.
high level with the
Yeah,
floor.
right. Ball skills, we both gave him a 4. I think that's that's his strength. That's to me, it blends into coverage. But again, give me the guy who's going to turn and take the ball away as opposed to a guy who's just going to knock the ball away, right?
Hmm.
Or cause a deflection or cause an incompletion. And he does have a knack for taking away the football, which I appreciate. And I think you
Yeah,
can't underestimate
he
that.
just doesn't quite have the numbers yet, but you see it when he has a chance.
Yeah, sometimes that's a product of not being challenged, right?
Hmm.
And that's the thing. You have to see when he gets the ball thrown his way, does he have a decent amount of like ability to like take the football away? I would say yes, and I think that's the strength of his instincts. We definitely gave him a 4. He plays with a high IQ. He's a good fit on the Giants. He's a 3, nothing special, but a good fit. And he there's no goon in him, but he's a solid football player.
Hmm.
Overall, 3.57. I mean, again, he's grading out number 3 overall for us on safeties, but he's not just a safety. He's a hybrid. He's a nickel and a safety. And his defense and his I don't know if you I don't I mean his snaps show it. I'll go, I went over the snaps by Mukuba, but the snaps this year, look at this. 271 in the slot, 215 in the box, and 400 deep. I mean, that's a pretty good distribution, right?
Hmm.
He's very versatile. So I do think that there is a lot of value there in a player like that. It's the kind of player the NFL does covet, and he's an elite athlete. He was a 5-star recruit. I'd be a little bit surprised if he made it out of the first round. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
I I think a winning team like that's drafting in the 20s that
that's
needs
a great
secondary help,
that's a
right?
great point because
Right.
he's gonna be an
He's a
instant contributor
he's a polished player, like
on a
he's gonna
winning
be,
team.
yeah. The Brian Branch, the Daxton Hill, like those guys go into a good team. Obviously, Daxton Hill went to a team that wasn't great, right? Like they were good, and then one of the Bengals. I think they drafted him coming off their Super Bowl, if I recall, their Super Bowl visit.
I think so.
Um, Brian Branch went to the Lions as they were ascending, but they were beginning to put the pieces of that secondary together. Um, they just kind of bring it all together, right? Guys like this go into a good team, a good defense, and they put it together and they become real weapons. So they may be more impactful at the NFL level than you're seeing in their final year of college. But I would have a hard time seeing one of these teams drafting in the 20s or 30s not taking a swing on Malachi Moore. I don't think he's a blue chipper. I don't agree with
No.
that assessment. I don't see blue chip here. I don't see teams rushing to take him in the top 10. I'd be very surprised if that happened. I really would be. You never know, but I think somewhere in the late teens to 20s or so is probably where he goes to a good football team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm not. I'll say I think that's a good spot for him, and I would be perfectly fine taking Malachi Starks if he fell out of the first round and we had an opportunity at him. But at the same time, he's not like as highly as people are talking about him. I'm not like, holy crap, you like we get a chance of this guy. Like you got to take him. Like he's a good football player. He's not like I don't look him. I mean, he has all the athleticism and stuff to be an all pro and that type of stuff. I just don't see it on tape right now.
I just want to address that D Kid is unimpressed with our episode so far. He said, I'm not going to lie, safety night is eh. Part of that is because I got an urgent phone call and I had to go handle adult business. Part of that is because he's just being a jerk and he's upset because he knows we're going to draft a safety in the second round and he's going to go on a knip shit over it. But just get used to it, DK. One of these guys is going to be a giant on day two. Book it. We're taking one of them. We're taking one of these guys. So you better hope it's a good one. Um, you want to go to number four?
Yeah, I'll go number four. And I'll say, like, definitely could like field visions. Honestly, I probably went a little bit low on that one. That's I have overall in this, but he's a good player.
He's a
But
very
let's go ahead and go to the next one. So with number four, and I know DKit's a big fan of this. Maybe this will
That's
reel
why
him
he's
back
pissed off
in.
because the name hasn't been said yet, and he's whining about it.
Yeah, he's just very upset that his guy hasn't been talked about. And now we are going to talk about him, bring him up right now. And yes, DKit knows. Safety at University of South Carolina, Nick Emmanwori, and
I'm in Warrior.
Warrior.
I'm in Warrior.
He is a physical freak. I mean, this is a guy who originally was on the Feldman freak list. This guy, see what they have it listed as here: 6'3", 227 pounds. I mean, absolute giant who has a ton of athleticism to go up to that. And I'll pull up the freak list numbers after Sal goes so we can talk a little bit of that too. But just the ideal frame that you want for. He's got that like Cam Chancellor type frame with that athleticism. And I definitely see a lot of physicality with him. I think he's a guy who can play downhill and really come and blow up a play. I saw him fight through blocks in the run game, and even put him down in the line and jam some guys at the line of scrimmage. He really plays with some aggression and urgency. I thought he was effective as a blitzer. His athleticism popped. He's very explosive and a guy who I think has the long speed to play all over the field. I thought he did a good job diagnosing plays and getting in the right position. Thought his zone coverage was solid, and I thought he had really like solid hands and making plays in the ball with his ball skills. I saw him make quite a few picks, and I think that's something that he'll continue to do at the next level. Again, something that we mentioned, he can be over aggressive. He's another guy who can miss tackles due to that. Not as bad as some of these other guys, 10.5% forced incompletion rate. So that's not even a concern. 10.5 is probably better around where you want to be. So that's not too bad. Definitely another guy who kind of needs to work on finishing his tackles. And then I think he's a little bit limited long term. I mean, we can where he can play. I mean, he played all over for South Carolina. You see 147 reps in the slot, 413 in the box, 193 deep. I think he can do that in the NFL and give you a little bit everywhere. He has the athleticism to do it. Ultimately, I do view him as a box safety. Oh, you were correct, DK. I messed that up. 7.2% missed tackle rate. That is actually phenomenal. I saw some missed tackles, but that is really good. So, shout out to him. There's a 10.5 incompletion rate, which is middle of the road. But yes, 7.22 is great.
I'm gonna blow up that number in a second whenever you're done.
All right. I know. I'm good. Go ahead and blow up away.
Yeah. So Emmanwori is he's a linebacker, you know? I mean I really so he's a very good safety when he's used in the box alignment. I would agree that he's he's a good tackler when he gets there, and he's very good in coverage. He uses his length very well. Um, but this is my criticism of him. For a guy who it is vindictive, I agree. Um, Wait till you hear what I have to say about Dion Walker again. But like, but about the thing about Amari is for the athlete that he tests at is 100% not the player you see on the football field. I don't see that athleticism on the football field. I mean, I see the range, because he has stride length. I see his ability to use length, and he's got good ball skills, and he's a very disruptive football player. He really is, and he's a good football player. But there was a lack of urgency to his game that I'll be honest. I watched it over and over and over again, multiple games. I don't know if that's just his demeanor, but he doesn't play with any sense of urgency out there. And there are plays where, like, he won't miss a tackle. Like, once he gets his arms around you, I agree. He's got big arms, he's strong, he'll take you down. But there are things that are not called missed tackles because he just doesn't get there. And I don't understand why he doesn't get there. I don't know if it's the angles he takes, Sometimes he takes weird angles. Sometimes he doesn't show any urgency to get to the ball carrier. There are plays I saw where he's in coverage and the play's in front of him, and he's got a couple of his teammates trying to make a tackle, and he's like watching from a few yards away and not showing any urgency to jump in the play and make the tackle.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's discipline to like protect the back half of the field in case somebody breaks away, or it's just kind of like, oh, my teammates got it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so I'm not, I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to attribute a negative trait to the guy, but when you compare him to guys like Watts and to Mukuba, who play with their hair on fire, right?
Yep.
They want in on the tackle every play. I don't care if the tackle is 30 yards that way. I want in on the tackle. He doesn't play like that. He like, if the play's in front of him, if it comes to him, he's making it. Like, he's not gonna miss a tackle. He's not gonna have a technically bad rep that way. And if there's a pass play in his direction, he's very good at getting his hands up, deflecting it, taking away the ball, making it. Just his length alone creates difficult passing windows for quarterbacks, which is it's a skill, and it's a threat against offenses. So there's a lot he has to offer, but there's just a lack of urgency, in his game that I just couldn't get over when I kept watching him. Like, why isn't he going faster? Why isn't he moving more
Mhm.
aggressively? And and Benson Ott caught a fake punt. So screw you. So I'm fighting with Deacon. But there's just, like, I wish he would play a little bit more aggressively and use that athleticism, because he has it, right? Like, Emmanwori is going to go to the combine. He's going to look like a Greek god when he gets out there, and he's going to test like a freak, like the
Yep.
freak that he is. And people are going to be like, oh my, like, Emmanwori is the guy who's going to have like a 9.89 RAS score, right?
Yeah.
Or something ridiculous like that. He's gonna test off the charts. His
He
traits
might get
are
10.
elite. He
Mhm.
might get a 10. His traits are elite for a safety. His athletic ability is elite for a safety. I just wish he would use it more. That's my criticism of Emmanwori.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear you. The one thing I'll disagree on is that I personally, I did see the athleticism pop on tape, but I agree with you that he didn't use it like he should be. Like you said, like we talked about Watts and Mukuba, playing with their hair on fire, and that is not something we use to describe him. And that is something. Like, look, he can come downhill and blow a play up. He it can make some big hits, and he's a physical player. And at times, he he made plays that I don't think he's going to make in the NFL. Like, um, I think it's a big example where I do think he's a great athlete, but it's not necessarily always a good thing. Like, I felt like he could be late to making a play and he could take a bad angle, but he could still end up making the tackle because he's such a good athlete that it didn't matter. But in the NFL, that you're not going to get away with that.
And
I
he's a
think
technically sound tackler. Like, if he gets his hands
yeah,
on you, you're going down.
yeah, he just needs to make sure he takes the right angle so he can get there, and not like over pursue. But I do think he's like when he's coming down, he's an aggressive player, and a lot of that comes with his speed and his strength. I mean, you can see it. He absolutely lights people up. He can absolutely light people up in the game. But I do agree with you that I don't see it to the level I want. When I see a guy of this much speed and this much size, I want this guy to be an absolute enforcer and
Yeah.
on a down to down basis. And you don't see that. His highlight tape, you'll see an enforcer for sure because there's plenty of that there. But it's yeah, I agree with you. It's not often enough on a down by down basis. But I'll say a couple things I kind of just left off with it. I'll add on to it. He is a guy who can do a lot for a big guy. For a big safety, you don't see people who move like him. And I'm not just talking about how he's going to test and his straight line speed and like for somebody as tall as he is, you don't see guys who have as fluid hips as Emmanwori does. I thought not he doesn't, compare with some of the guys we talked about, but those guys are 200 pounds, 6'1". This guy's 6'3", 225, and he can really flip his hips and run with wide receivers, stuff like that. I think, this guy has potential to be, the player that can be your tight end eraser in the NFL if you can get him in the right spot with the right coach. I think he can do that type of stuff for you. He's a really, really intriguing player, and it's all about just using him correctly in the NFL. But I agree he's not exactly where I want him to stay. But he, go over some of his numbers here from the freak list. 6'3", 227 pounds. He broad jumps 11 feet 4 inches. He vertical jumps 42 inches. He has 24 reps of 225, squats 565, and he runs close to 23 miles per hour.
Yeah,
Pretty crazy.
he's ridiculous. So before D-Kit gets off this pod and he yells at me for the next few days, my criticism of Emmanwori is that I think he could be so much better. I
Mm-hmm.
think with his gifts, this is a guy that his projection upside is an elite player at the safety position. And I don't think he's playing at an elite level right now. I think there are things he does very well. There are things he just doesn't show the urgency. It's not lack of innate ability. I just don't think he shows it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what he does, and here's the good part. He already has good ball skills. He has a knack for taking the football away, also. Right? He gets his hands up there. He'll bait quarterbacks. He uses his length. He uses his size. He'll get in front of plays, and it's hard to throw the ball over him, right? And he'll get there and win balls high. DBs who get turnovers are valuable. Guys who get turnovers are valuable, and he's one of those guys. So he has more value than what his tape will show on some run fits and things like that. He's a good tackler, but he's an outstanding player when he's baiting and zone and trying to take the ball away. That's where he really excels. And he has the kind of athletic ability where you should be able to put him anywhere. You should be able to put him in single high. You should be able to line him up in the nickel. You should be able to have him be in the box and be an eraser for tight ends. He has to develop those things. And I think he's going to have to develop some of that at the NFL level because obviously he's in the draft. And I don't think he's got all that down yet. This guy, to me, he just screams Indianapolis Colt because he's going to be the Chris
Yeah.
Ballard like wet dream. Right, like they're gonna want him, and they're gonna say, "Oh, we're gonna take this guy. We're gonna put him in." Who's their new DC now? They hired they hired the guy for out of Notre Dame, right, in Indianapolis, or no? He went to
No, they
Cincinnati.
hired Anna
Oh, Anorama. Okay,
Yeah.
right. So I could see them like getting a guy like Amanwari and having him join their really putrid secondary, right? And I think he has the athletic upside to potentially 5 years down the line, we could be looking back at this class and saying, Anawari is Amanwari is the best safety from this group because he filled out all of his athletic ability, put it together on the field. Nobody has this kind of innate ability, and if he puts it all together, he could be easily the best safety in this class, but he isn't yet. And I think
Yeah.
that's a fair criticism.
Yep. No, I agree with you. So do you want to get into the grades here?
Absolutely. Uh, so speed and range both gave him a 4. He's fast. Physicality, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 2.
Yeah, I know. We were different on this one.
Um, I just saw too many plays where I thought he took the play off. I get it. He can play like a goon sometimes. Um, and I know he wants to hit. I just didn't love it, but this is where I differ from you.
It
Yeah.
feels like that I factored in like his size and athleticism, now how that affects his play style, and you knocked him for not playing up to his size and his athleticism.
I did. I'm grading him on a curve here. I'm grading him
Yeah,
on an
and
Emmanwori curve. I have, you know what,
and I
DK?
did the opposite.
Yeah, I have higher standards for this young man than you apparently do. So you know what? Take it up with yourself. Look at the man in the mirror. I want him to be better.
A two.
Two. Coverage, you gave him a three. I gave him a four. Again, I value the ability to bait quarterbacks and take the ball away,
Mhm.
and I know so that's why I think he's very good at
I
zone.
I think with this one, it's hard because he's more of like a box guy. I just, I don't want him carrying nickel slot wide receivers, and I wouldn't want him playing high or anything like that. So it's so hard to kind of like factor that stuff in with with all these different types of safeties.
Field vision, we both gave him a three. He's average there. Run support, we gave him a three. He's average. I could have given him,
He's
I wanted to give him a four, but he doesn't do it enough,
he get
and
a four.
that's
He'd get a four in tackling if we had tackling as one. He just doesn't get a like full
four.
altogether. He doesn't get a four.
Right. Ball skills definitely gave him a four. This and again, ball skills probably should weigh more than some of these other categories, to be honest.
And a lot of good ball skills in this class.
Really, yeah, and that's something that he has. He has in spades. And instincts three. You gave him a two for Giants, but I didn't grade that out. I would say he's also, I would say three. I'm not going to give him a
I
two. I
I
give him
just
a
don't
three.
see the fit next to Newbin. You're just I mean, I guess if maybe not. Maybe I should have done a three because Newbin should be able to be like a coverage guy. Maybe not single high, but should be able to play high and be a coverage linebacker, safety. But the Giants don't use him that way.
They just don't. So yes, I have high standards for him. I'm holding him to that, DK. I'm sorry. He's got to be better. He should be better than what he is, and I think he will be at the NFL level, but he's not there yet. So he's number four. Um, Anything else on him? I'm trying to think of a comp for him. I don't have a good one. Did you think of any good comps for him?
I just wanted him to be Cam Chancellor the whole time I watched him, and he wasn't Cam Chancellor. James
It's James Wilson. Or
James Williams.
James Williams. I keep calling him James Wilson.
Yeah, you did
Yeah.
that earlier. I don't. Yeah, I don't know what to call. D-Kit said he sounded like I was describing Isaiah Simmons a little bit earlier. That's the bad side with him. It could be that.
you know, you can laugh, but that's not a crazy comp.
No, it
You know,
isn't.
I mean, it's like, what do you do with this guy? Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? Really good football player, but like, what do you do with him? And I think there's a chance he falls into that bucket if he goes to the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the James Williams comment really threw his blood sugar off.
Yeah,
But
DK was happy with that one.
the post show space is going to be one where I get yelled at a lot. So that's okay. I'm ready for it. All right, you ready to go to number five here?
Yeah, let's go to the last one here.
The last guy, we had to throw this guy in to number five, mainly because what DB room would be complete in the modern NFL without a token member of white DB University, sort of white, sort of swarthy, that is no other than Sebastian Castro from Iowa. We need an Iowa safety in here, right? Sebastian Castro is 5'11", 205 pounds. This guy is mainly, he's another hybrid. He's a nickel safety, with just a lower level one compared to some of the other guys we talked about. I like him. When you watch him, he's a limited athlete. Let's start there. Sebastian Castro
Mhm.
is not, he ain't Cooper DeJean. He sure as shit ain't, Emmanwori as an athlete. He's not even close. But with his limited athletic capabilities, he's a pretty good football player. He's strong. He likes to tackle. He's physically fights through blocks. He's good in the run game. He's good at clicking and closing, coming downhill. He's reliable in run support, and that makes him valuable in the nickel position and as a box safety. But he's versatile. Like I said, he played a lot of nickel alignment. He's pretty good in coverage. He's not terrible. He doesn't have the long speed to like stick with guys like beyond, like, I would say the early part of the intermediate level. You get beyond that, he's not somebody I want running with guys. But I think in the short area, he's got good coverage skills in man. He's very good in zone. He has good instincts. You can see that he's like a seasoned, well coached Iowa player. He's good at play recognition. He has a good football IQ. picks up on the quarterback's cues. He follows him with his eyes. Like you can watch him, whatever he's doing, he's got his eyes on the quarterback at all times. And he's a good blitzer, right? He's useful. Something we didn't talk about a lot today, but that's a modern utility of safeties, right? You have to be able to use guys who can come downhill and blitz and take out the quarterback when they get a chance. He's good at that. Well coached. I mean, that's what I kept thinking of when I was watching Sebastian Castro. Like good IQ, well coached player. Not surprised an Iowa safety, and he has good ball skills. And like nothing great, but good. He can has good pass break ability. He can take the ball away if it comes his way. He's not this elite athlete with crazy length where he's gonna like out jump guys and stuff like that. But he's not exactly a pushover either. Um, those are the pros. The cons, again, limited athlete, doesn't have great speed. Um, Sometimes he tries to play above his weight and he's not able to. What I mean by that, he tries to be physical in a way that he's not capable of being, and you see it. He'll miss tackles, guys will run through him sometimes. Um, and there are times where he could be a better run defender. Like I think the instincts um, as a nickel, sometimes he's very aggressive. You need him to be more solid in run fits. Um, and again, like I think he's a good zone defender. This guy, somebody was asking, I think it was Brad asking about like, is this guy like the money backer? No, this guy is the money backer.
Mhm.
This guy's like a classic. He's the Dane Belton, all right? He's the Dane Belton prototype from Iowa this year. He played a lot of the money backer role. I don't think he's good in man to man, but I think he's very good in zone coverage. So overall, this is a good safety. He has versatility to play nickel. He's kind of good all around. There's nothing spectacular about him, but he's a solid player. I view him as kind of like honestly, I think he's like a day three guy. Um,
Mhm.
if but I think I think he's a useful football player that can be somebody who takes on at least 30 to 40% of your snaps, and be useful at least that much. So that's kind of what I think about him. What did you get on Castro?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. I could see Castro being, a player that the NFL really likes. I don't know where he'll end up going, but I can see him rising up boards often because, he plays very physical. He's a very physical football player who is talented. Like you said, doesn't have a ton of weaknesses. I'd say his biggest weakness is probably his tackling. He's not a great tackler, but I think he does. He blitzes well. He plays physical. He's not perfect in the run game, but I do think he's a solid run player. He does everything you kind of want from like a nickel like box safety guy. He got a little bit of got a little bit of Andrew Phillips there. He has his tackling issues, but he's still a physical, good run defender from the slot position, but he adds a little bit of ball skills from that position. He, unlike a guy like Andrew Phillips who didn't have any of that, Sebastian Castro, is a guy who can get his hands on the football and make an interception. This year was a down year for Castro, especially in the coverage department, but in 2023, that's something he did really well. I think that's worth mentioning. In 2023, he had, let me see, I'm going to pull it up right here. He had 3 interceptions and 6 PBUs. Well, this year he only had 1 interception and 1 PBU. He also had a 90.5 coverage grade last year, and he only had a 67.9 this year. So things really kind of fell off in that department. He didn't make as much plays, but when you watch him play, he's just a good football player. I think he's going to be an asset to a team. I don't know to what level. It would not surprise me if this guy comes in day one and is just a really good like slot corner box safety who can, as you always just find making plays for you, keeping stuff in front of them, getting in the backfield and making tackles, things like that. Kind of like what you saw from Andrew Phillips this year and making early production. You also see a guy who, if he's used incorrectly, could really struggle. And a guy who,
He can get exposed.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, he does not have long speed at all. Um, if you put him outside, it's going to be a problem. You put him too high, I think it's going to be a problem. But I don't see enough limitations in his game. I mean, maybe his tackling could get him off the field because that carries over the NFL. Like, luckily for Phillips, he had some issues, but he cleaned up a lot of it. It definitely improved. If he doesn't improve it going into the league, it's gonna be hard to put him onto the football field. 17.1 missed tackle percentage, not good, but yeah, I mean, overall, I like Sebastian Castro. I really do. I think he's a good football player.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything bad to say. I don't have anything great to say either. I think he's just solid. Like it's a little bit lazy, but one of the guys I thought about comparing him to was a guy like Riley Moss, also came out of Iowa. I always thought Riley Moss was going to be a solid. Now he's a little bit taller, but I thought he'd be more of a solid nickel in the NFL. They're
Don't
using
you
him on the outside.
don't you do this to Riley Moss? Riley Moss is a track athlete. He is a ball hawk.
He's struggling on the outside,
Yeah.
in Denver. He's struggling. And I think that he's a better nickel. And this is a guy who I think we saw that out of Riley. I remember they were talking of Riley Moss moving to safety when he came out into
Mhm.
the NFL because he struggles in man
Racism.
coverage. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's reverse racism. That's right. That's all it is. But I feel like Sebastian Castro is another guy. Like, if you use him wrong, I don't think he's going to excel. I don't think but I think if you use him mostly in the slot and mixed in with some role in like box safety, like that kind of mix, I do think he's a pretty good football player. Again, he's not 100% of snaps kind of guy, but he's a rotational safety and nickel, and I think that those guys have value. So if you pick up a guy like that on day three and you have a plan, like these kinds of guys, you got to have a plan. What am I going to do with this guy, right? Like, where am I plugging him in? Where does he help my team? I'm not using a premium draft pick on him, but I think that's kind of where he goes. I'd be surprised if he goes day two. What do you think?
Yeah, I would be surprised. Maybe, yeah, no, I don't see it. He really would have to blow up this pre-draft process. I don't know. We didn't get into our Senior Bowl stuff this year, so I didn't see his name listed with today when they did the measurements, but something with the Senior Bowl would help him out a lot.
Yeah, and he's older. I mean, he's already 24 years old. I mean, I don't see huge upside here. I just think a good football player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I All right.
Yeah,
So
he
that's
is.
our
He is at the Senior Bowl, so that's good.
that's good. So hopefully he'll be able to raise his stock a little bit, but I'm just not sure. Rad asked, did Rod Moore declare? No, Rod Moore is going back to school. Rad.
Is he?
He's going back to Michigan. Um, so
Yep, he
Michigan
is.
is loading
Yep.
up. They're loading up on their talent. They're pulling an Ohio State. They're bringing a lot of their guys back. So, and they're bringing in guys to transfer portal.
Good,
So
good,
that's
good for
that's
him because he got
yeah,
hurt. He needs to rebuild his stock.
yeah, and that's the new trend in college football anyway. Um, you know, so I think a lot of guys with the NIL money available are going to go back rather than see themselves get taken on day three. All right, so that's our five. Again, we're going to recap it real quick. Our number one safety was Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. Number two was Andrew Mukuba out of Texas. Number three was Malachi Moore. I'm excuse me, Malachi Starks out of Georgia. Um, Number four was Nick Emmanwori out of South Carolina. And number five is Sebastian Castro out of Iowa, who projects as a safety slash nickel. Um, we have them ranked that way, but again, we were very clear on this. Watts, probably an early day two guy. Mukuba, probably an early to mid day two guy. Our number three, you know, based on how we scored him Starks, we still think he's going. I still think he's going day one. I think he's a
Yeah,
first round pick.
but I don't think
Really.
he's this top 10 people are talking about. I think that hype will die down.
Yep. Exactly. So here we are. That's our that, and so I think that's how this is going to go. And the other guys, I think, both. Evan Wari. I think he's an early day two guy also just from athletic testing. I think you'll see him taking in that 40 to 50 range most likely. Maybe a little later, maybe a little sooner. I don't know. Somebody may fall in love with him. He's a guy whose stock could change combine. At the combine, I think when people see that he has like perfect athletic testing, they may raise his stock. He's a guy who'll help himself there. Um, and Castro, I think, is like a solid player day three. So I mean that's the class. I mean, I don't think it's overall. I don't think it's a bad safety class. I was pleasantly surprised there was some talent there, but this is how safety classes are, right? Like there's usually a couple of guys that are like exciting, and then it just kind of falls off, right?
Yeah,
And
and there's other guys we
uh,
didn't talk about too. So, also we should go over what our grades on Castro.
oh, I'm sorry, I completely skipped it because I thought it was so unimportant. All right, uh, so we have identical grades. We both gave him a 3 for speed and range, so he's average there.
Hmm.
4 for physicality. Any Iowa DB that gets less than a 4 here should be expelled from school. Um, Coverage, he's solid. We gave him a 3. Field vision, we gave him a 4. Well coached, good instincts.
Hmm.
Run support, we gave him a 3. Ball skills, we gave him a 3. Instincts, we gave him a 3. I don't think he's a very good fit for the Giants. Not as they're presently constituted. So we gave him a 2, but he played like he has a little bit of chip on his shoulders. We gave him a 4 on the Goon grade. We had identical grades on him, so he ranked out as our 5th. Um, that's kind of it. I feel like almost going back and changing some of my Emmanwori grades to make DKIT feel better. Um, like specifically the physicality grade, but I enjoy tweaking him with that one. So maybe I'll just leave it alone. But
Yeah, we
overall, it's a
still have
decent
time
class.
to tweak things a little bit.
Yeah. No, look, we're gonna grade how we see it, right? Just on what
Mhm.
we watch and how we feel. Like it's not gonna be consistent with the general draft Twitter community. These guys are gonna say what they say, and I mean, one of the criticisms we had this because this is our last episode of reviewing the positions before we get into other stuff. It's worth noting one of the problems with draft evaluations, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners know and a lot of people have realized, is there's just a lot of groupthink. And I feel like
Mhm.
there are not a lot of independent opinions based on what you yourself saw. Like you don't have a process to watch them, you don't independently watch them and grade them, and you just kind of say what everybody else says. You feel pressure to grade people or to rank people based on how others do it, and that groupthink leads to herding of results. And there's not but all you're doing is copying things. You're not actually
Mhm.
offering any insight. This is a lesson I think I took from our episode with Matt Waldman last year, where he said essentially don't do that. Matt Waldman, for those who don't know, reviews 4 offensive positions only: quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and running back. He reviews every draft eligible player in the class for all those positions and has a detailed analysis. Matt Waldman, had a long episode with us last year, which was awesome. And he said he might come back this year, so we'll try to get him. But um,
Most DKIT
what
doesn't ask so many questions.
yeah, well, we're not going to take questions from Matt Waldman because he'll never come back. We'll have to agree to that. But Waldman doesn't look at anybody else's reviews, right? He says like when he does
Mhm.
his reviews, like he tunes out and he just watches the player, and he has a very specific. If you read his RSP, his guide, every position that he grades, he has like tons and tons of methodology pages for each one. How he grades the footwork, how he grades the release, how he grades the hands, how he grades route running, like detail. Like he just charts one after another, play after play after play, and he comes up with this system. And over time, that data becomes valuable and objective, and he gives him an independent view of things. And he sometimes has views that are very different than anybody else. For example, do you remember who his QB2 was in last year's class?
Michael Penix, right?
Michael Penix was his QB2. Music to my ears. And look, I mean, he didn't play, he only played a few games, but you saw what Penix did right away. Like he looks like a
Mhm.
veteran out there. So, I think groupthink sometimes will just skew data. So even if our numbers are not going to align with how guys are drafted, or how people think they're going to get drafted, we're going to independently evaluate this to the best of our ability. We had to use some sort of compass for this, and we decided to use the Bill Walsh guide. We'll see. This is our
Yeah.
first year doing a grading system. We'll see how it tracks out. We'll see how these guys play at the NFL level, and we'll tweak it and we'll
Yeah.
learn from it.
And look, and then the good thing is we only watch a couple of these guys' games as we're going through it. If we're wildly off on something, you can go back and look, watch more games. Did I miss
What did you
something?
miss? Yep.
And if I didn't, I'm not going to change it. If I did miss something, okay, you're right, I'll change it. But like, being honest with your evaluations, like, is something where and sometimes people just approve. We do this early, like last year, Roma Dunze was a guy we were harsh on, and we said he's a guy who's a big dude who does not win contested catches. He had a really low contested catch rate. Comes out next year as one of the best contested catch rates in the country. It's like, okay, like that changes
He,
things. Like,
he went from 25% to 70% from one year to
mm-hmm,
the next, right? And so that fixed the one big problem he had in his stock surge. This year we did our defensive lineman episode early, and the guy who was the consensus D lineman two in this class at that point, like no questions asked, this is the top 10 pick. Remember that? It's
mm-hmm,
Deion Walker out of Kentucky.
top 10
We
every mock draft.
at that time when we did it, we watched him. We're like, what the fuck are people talking about?
Mm-hmm,
This guy has a lot of problems. Yes, I see the athletic upside. Yes, I see the trait. You can't like today he measured in like at 6'7",
that's insane.
340. He's a monster, right? I can see why people want him, right? Like he's a monster. And if you could coach him up, you're not going to find physical specimens like him walking around every day, right? So
Mm-hmm,
somebody's going to want to take that guy. But on his tape, he was not a good defensive lineman. And then he had a kind of a down year. Now you know, there are aspects to that. They probably overutilized him. He was playing way too many snaps. That's all real, and that affected him. But he has technical deficiencies, and we independently said, "Nah, I don't think we can rank him that high here." Made our list, but he wasn't near the top. And then lo and behold, look at him now, and he's kind of grading out as like a mid day two guy, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, Again with the Deion Walker. Yeah, I'm doing this on purpose. So again, we just use your own eyes, watch these guys, evaluate them on your own. You don't need a scoring system, but just be honest about your own personal evaluation. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If people give you heat, who cares? You at least did the work and you looked at it. And that's how we're going to approach it. Um, but what I don't want to do is adopt someone else's opinion. That's
Yeah.
much worse than just being wrong with your own. So,
Because then
anyway,
you'll never learn why you were wrong if you're just adopting someone else, and you'll never tweak you'll get your process to where it needs to be.
exactly. All right. I think that's an episode, man. So that concludes all of our positions. We are finished. Yeah, he might become the next Dex D kid. Maybe he'll be a giant and we can all celebrate that later. But that's our position groups. We are done. It took us a while, a lot longer this year because we got busy with life and we were doing these more like every other week than every week.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we're through these, which are time consuming episodes, we're gonna get into some other stuff. I don't know how we might do a Senior Bowl recap as opposed to like the preview we did last year, which was like our least popular episodes.
Yeah, no, but
Um,
you guys spoke that you guys don't like the 4-part Senior Bowl previews.
right. So I think we're gonna watch some of the week of Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl action this year, and we're gonna try to like just bring you some breakdown of that next week and
Mm-hmm.
and see. And I think it's worth breaking down some of these players that pop and then retrospectively go back and look at them and see which ones look like maybe we should have viewed them higher. And obviously we'll get into more offseason stuff as we approach, free agency and the end of the season, obviously looming. And we'll see how the Giants draft stuff shakes out. But until we see you guys next time, thank you again. Follow us at He's a Giant Pod, follow me at Queens underscore guy, follow Monty at MONTECRI5TO. Rad's asking when's the first round mock episode? Well, I don't know. We'll get to it.
Yeah,
Um,
probably
we
after
probably
the
have to,
Senior Bowl
yes, we'll probably do the
preview.
Senior Bowl one. We'll do the Senior Bowl one next week, I think.
Well, I won't be here next week. I'll be in
Oh, that's
Mexico
right.
next week.
Monty is turning 18. So
18.
he's going.
Yeah.
It's
Or wait.
everybody.
Or no,
Everybody
I'll be
wish.
back. I'll be back. Man, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, everybody wish Monty a happy early birthday. Um, because he's got one coming up. So he's going off to a vacation, but he'll be back and we'll do something. After that, I think we'll get into the mock drafts.
Yeah, I messed up. This was the week that I wouldn't be able to do it, but we did it Monday, so I'll be back next Monday. So I'll be good.
You don't even know when your own birthday is.
Yeah, well, it's no, I don't. It's Friday. I think it's Friday.
I don't know how you function in life. All right, gentlemen, we appreciate you guys as always. Thank you for being here. I know this was a tough one to watch. Safeties at the very end, but you guys are all here. We love you guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Go. Well, there's no game this week. There's no college football. There's no football. There's nothing. So go Senior Bowl.
Go Senior Bowl. See you next
Go
time, guys.
Shrine
Love you.
Bowl. All right, guys. Take care.